Welcome to Workforce Wednesday, and today our topic is developing your superpower emotional intelligence, or EQ. Our presenters today are Victoria Hinojosa and Jasmine Grabowski with Workforce Solutions Gulf Coast. My name is Olga Escamilla, and I'm going to be the host moderator, and I also have Liz Moya and Anne Marie helping out today. So I'd like to welcome our presenter. Our first presenter is Victoria Hinojosa, and she specializes in training and educating community partners, workforce solutions staff, and job seekers throughout the 13-county region. She served over 8 years at Texas State University Career Service Center as a recruiting coordinator, preparing college students for the workforce. She's a graduate of Texas State University with a BA in Mass Communication. So welcome, Victoria. We also have Jasmine Grabowski, and she is passionate about serving others. She has a background in teaching and recently served with the Summer Earn to Learn Youth Program. She's a graduate of Texas State University with a BA in German and earned a job coach certification from University of North Texas Workplace Inclusion and Sustainable Employment Program in 2019. Her goal is to continue supporting her community by helping adults and students reach their fullest potential. So welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Olga. Okay, so would you believe that there are 28 workforce boards in the state of Texas? Now, the link at the bottom right will take you to the workforce board designated to your region. And which board are you closest to by looking at this map? And Victoria and I are actually designated to number 28, and that's also referred to as the Gulf Coast Region Workforce Board.
Okay, we have some responses. We have an 8.
Okay.
East Texas, a 10, Borderplex, Alamo, a 28, which is Gulf Coast, 17, which is East Texas, Alamo,
Dallas, too.
3, yeah, North Texas. Woo.
All over the board. This is great.
Awesome.
Welcome.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for your responses. Okay, so the purpose of this webinar is to understand emotional intelligence, help you discover ways to develop your emotional intelligence, and recognizing emotions in others and handling personal relationships. So emotional intelligence is the ability to identify your own emotions and those of others, also to self-motivate ourselves and know how to monitor our emotions and those of people around us. Now, would you consider yourself as someone that is able to identify their emotions? And pretty much everybody's saying yes. See a lot of yeses. Okay, awesome. So I see everybody saying yes, so that's a good thing. So basically, emotional intelligence is measured into 4 segments, and these 4 segments are known as the 4 areas of ability. So let's talk about the first level. Now, this one is identified as general perception. So basically, individuals who possess high emotional intelligence, what they can do is sense their own emotions, but they can also sense the emotions of others. And then the second area is measured by how those emotions are being used. So if you're good at problem solving, or you're perhaps good at making decisions, then you have a high level of emotional intelligence, most likely. And then what this ability does, it can be very beneficial, especially in the workplace. Now, the third area is known as simply understanding emotions. So when you are able to understand the emotions of others, that also includes the ability to read those non-verbal cues. And with this, high emotional intelligent people, they can actually diffuse complicated relationships. The final and fourth measurement is the ability to manage those emotions. So when you're able to do that, manage your emotions, you can bring out positive emotions in others, and you can also control your own reactions to certain behaviors. Emotional intelligence is also made up of 5 basic components, and those are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And the first one is self-awareness. So understanding your emotions is the basis of being self-aware. So what this does, it enables individuals to identify which emotions they may be feeling, and why you're experiencing that particular emotion. Self-regulation is the second component, and here you can choose the emotion that you want to experience. And when you're regulating your emotions, it eliminates, acting on impulse, as some may do, and making careless decisions. The next one is motivation. So when you're using those positive emotions consistently, that's the basis principle behind motivation. And when you're possessing a high level of emotional intelligence, you can help individuals remain motivated even in difficult situations. And what these people do that are highly motivated, they continue to persist, they press on towards their goal. Empathy would be the next one. So people who are empathetic, they're great listeners, they're excellent relationship managers, and they're those people who emphasize with the point of view of others. And then the last and final one is the component of having social skills. And highly emotional intelligent people use their social skills to help others around them work cooperatively instead of competitively. And implementing these social skills inspires growth and development in others. So, where do you think all this talk of emotional intelligence first began? Okay, I see some responses. Affects learning, early childhood development, exploring difference between getting along. Okay, psychiatrist's office, affective domain. Okay, I see a lot of great responses here. So it's actually really funny. The concept of emotional intelligence was actually brought to the public's attention by two university professors, and their names were John Mayer and Peter Salovey. And so these two gentlemen, they were actually friends, and so they were conducting studies on emotions, they were studying intelligence and personality, and coincidentally, these two friends, they were also a fan of a political candidate at the time. His name was Gary Hart, and he actually got caught up in a scandal that came to the light of the public. So what happened was the two professors were shocked to discover that Gary Hart, the political candidate, was caught in an extramarital affair while running for his political campaign. And so Hart and Salovey, they were just really shocked by this, but what they concluded was that although Gary Hart was highly intelligent in the area of politics, when it came to his personal life, he lacked the ability to control his emotions. Okay, so we've already discussed what emotional intelligence is. So now let's dive into why emotional intelligence is important. And I have another question for you guys. Why do you think emotional intelligence is important? Okay, so we can be empathetic, our human nature, recognizing and understanding our emotions to lead and work well with others, maintain healthy relationships, controls happiness, yep, handle your emotions, get along well with others, positive social interactions, non-judgmental. Oh, wow, that's a good one. Emotion control sleep habits. Oh, that's interesting. Well, these are some great responses, so I will go ahead and continue. There are 5 main points on why emotional intelligence is important. For one, it can determine how successful you might be. So if your strong area is developing and maintaining positive relationships, then it is likely you will be successful. And also if you're quickly able to adjust to change, and if you're one of those people who's very flexible, then that's also could be a benefit of becoming successful. And research has proven that those who lack strong emotional intelligence find themselves struggling in this area. But the good news is that emotional intelligence can be improved over time. The second point on why emotional intelligence is important is because it teaches individuals to accept constructive criticism. So being receptive to constructive criticism can help people become better individuals as well as improve their performance. And highly emotional intelligent people recognize their own strengths and weaknesses, and they are self-aware, and they actually view constructive criticism as a learning opportunity to excel. So the third point is self-motivation. We've all heard the saying that attitudes are contagious. So I'm sure that we can all think of some situations where we've been around someone with like a bad attitude, and you can all pretty much, I'm sure, can remember how their attitude made you feel and how it was kind of like putting a damper on your day. Well, self-motivators, they are the complete opposite. These are your people that are easily motivated and they have an optimistic outlook on life. And not only do they motivate themselves, these self-motivators inspire others around them as well. And because they have such a high level of motivation, they usually perform better in general compared to those who lack that self-motivation. Next, having compassion for others would make up the fourth point on why emotional intelligence is important. So when a person has compassion for others, it is indicating that they are selfless. They are truly in the business of empathy, and compassionate people are kind and they show concern for others by making that emotional connection. And self-control is going to be the final point. So highly emotional people can control their negative emotions and they can also diffuse situations. They are not the people who act on impulse and they don't let the anger get the best of them, because when you allow anger to get the best of you, it implies that you may have low emotional intelligence. And again, we can all think of those people that may have like struck a nerve, but we do need to understand emotional intelligence does consist of negative and positive emotions. But the key is to remember to manage controlling those emotions. And again, that is a skill that must be practiced. So this is a quote by Daniel Goleman. Emotions are contagious. We've all known it experientially. You know, after you have a really fun coffee with a friend, you feel good. When you have a rude clerk in a store, you walk away feeling bad. That's just a little quote by him. And then I want to ask you guys, would you say that your emotions affect your everyday life?
Jasmine, I wanted to share what David wrote. Don't let people steal your joy and resist negative manipulation. That was based on the last comment that you read. So very true.
Oh, that is very true. I agree. Yes. And then somebody said relationships take self-care. Okay, so pretty much focus on my blessings, not my burdens. Focus on my blessings, not my burdens. I like that. That's David. Thank you. That was a good one. So all of you guys are saying that your emotions affect your everyday life. So I definitely agree. And now we're going to actually get into the 4 domains of emotional intelligence. So yes, it is true that your emotions affect your daily life. It explains why you behave the way you do, and how you communicate with others and how you interact with others. These 4 domains make up emotional intelligence. They are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. According to an article written by Dave Matlock, real emotional intelligence, or EQ, is a process, and that true success comes from strength and balance in each of these domains. And he also explains that all 4 domains are connected, but in order to master all 4, there's a certain level of understanding that is required. So the first one from Daniel Goleman's 4 domains is self-awareness. This is the foundation of out of all the domains. And you have to examine yourself and find out, why do you act the way that you do in certain situations. And if you don't know, what you can do is actually, get with a close friend or family member to kind of help you understand who you really are. And research conducted at Cornell University explains that self-awareness is the most difficult domain to develop out of the 4. And for this reason, the strongest for overall success is possessing high emotional self-awareness. Do you think that you are a patient person? Okay, so we have most of the time. Sometimes, depends on the situation. Okay, that makes sense. Somebody said yes, thank God, I think it was, at times. Okay, so we have some people that are on the fence, and some people are saying it just depends. Somebody said yes, only at work sometimes. Okay, makes sense. So a lot of people are on the fence on being patient. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the next topic. So that's self-management. Self-awareness can actually help you master self-management. So if you're one of those people that quickly reacts to certain situations in a negative manner, you probably need some work on self-management. So a good example would be waiting in a long line, or being stuck in traffic. Now, are you that person that gets easily frustrated in these scenarios? In self-management, you have to learn how to control your emotions, your actions, and your reactions. And another key point in self-management is identifying if you are reacting or if you're responding to certain situations. For example, you can respond patiently while being stuck in traffic, or you could just lose it by reacting and, screaming at the car that's in front of you. So it's pretty interesting. The third domain is social awareness. And according to research, social awareness can create people to be more service-oriented and more empathetic. So these are your people that are open to understanding the needs of others, and they take their needs into consideration. And these individuals that are socially aware, they can actually pick up on your emotional cues, and they also relate to emotions and concerns of those people that are around them. And the last and final domain is relationship management. So this is kind of more so connected to your professional success. This domain can not only help you succeed, it can encourage others to succeed as well. And relationship management is composed of leadership, communication, and conflict management, teamwork, and collaboration. And these are your people that are able to handle negotiations well at work. They're your problem solvers, and they are able to handle conflict and still get the goal done at hand. And if you can successfully conquer relationship management, it's inevitable you will also be successful in the other three domains. Years ago, it was believed that the ultimate factor to money and success was a person's IQ or intelligent quotient. But according to more recent research, however, it has been established that emotional intelligence, also known as EI, results in leading a successful and happy lifestyle. So your intelligence quotient is measured by standardized exams to determine a person's intellectual intelligence. And emotional intelligence is also known as emotional quotient and is evaluated by a person to being able to understand, control, and express their emotions. And IQ exams are actually also used for those who struggle with mental challenges. And these exams are conducted on individuals who may have like an off-the-chart intelligence. And I'm pretty sure you guys can think of some stories you may have seen or read about on TV where there's that child that has like a super high IQ. And now we're going to go a little deeper into comparing IQ and EQ. Okay, so some facts about intelligent quotient, IQ. These are your individuals that are good at logical reasoning, math skills, abstract thinking, word comprehension, and spatial thinking. And they can connect those dots and find success with these challenging tasks. The special needs population, gifted people, and those with mental challenges are actually found to have a high IQ. And then the score, the IQ score, is taken directly from standardized assessments to test that person's intelligence. The exam is composed of math skills, logical reasoning, and word comprehension. And the score examines if one's intellectual abilities are related to understand, learn, and apply information to a specific skill set. Okay, now that we've discussed where emotional intelligence started and why it's important, let's dive into comparing low and high emotional intelligence. So according to research, there's some real life benefits to having a high level of emotional intelligence. It means that these individuals can practice adaptability, as I mentioned earlier, in certain situations. They can understand emotions of others, and they also leave their feelings out of situations. And highly emotional intelligent people, they can also influence others, which indicates leadership. And again, they can manage emotions in others because they are able to understand others. Additional benefits to high emotional intelligence is that these individuals, they don't act solely based on instinct. They can control their emotional state, and they stray away from acting on impulses. Their decisions are made rationally, not impulsively. And highly emotional intelligent people, they are not self-focused. They rather focus on building relationships with others. And in comparison with those with a low EI, highly emotional intelligent people, they are more optimistic on life. And finally, these individuals actually handle stress extremely well. They view stress as a challenge, and handle tough circumstances with ease and confidence. And at this point, you may be wondering if you possess high or low emotional intelligence. So I'm going to share 10 qualities of highly emotional, intelligent people with you. So, which I thought was interesting. I thought that highly emotional, intelligent people were perfectionists, but they're actually not perfectionists, which I thought that was really interesting in our research. 2, they know how to balance work and play. These are your people that embrace change. They're not easily distracted. They are empathetic. They know their strengths and weaknesses. They are self-motivated. They don't dwell on the past. They focus on the positive. And 10, they set boundaries. Now, let's talk about the signs of high emotional intelligence. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and list them. So if you have signs of high emotional intelligence, these would be, there's 13 of them. So you think about your feelings, you pause, meaning you take a moment to think before you do or say something. You strive to control your thoughts. You benefit from criticism. You show authenticity. You demonstrate empathy. You're a person that praises others. You give helpful feedback. You apologize. You forgive and forget. You keep your commitments. You help others. And you protect yourself from emotional sabotage. All right. So now let's talk about the individuals with low emotional intelligence. So these are your people that don't think before they act in certain situations. They operate on impulse, and they do not adequately plan or prepare as related to the workplace. They don't handle stress well at all. And in some instances, employees with low emotional intelligence can even cost companies a lot of money because, for example, if you have an employee that's feeling greatly overwhelmed with a project, he or she may decide to quit the project because they might be stressed out about it. And if a company has a client who are depending on a project deadline from that particular employee, this could lead the company to losing money if they are depending on that, if they're also depending on that client because that client is bringing the company money in. So it can have some negative impacts. And another characteristic of people with low emotional intelligence is they lack the ability to self-analyze. So they have poor impulse control and their decisions are based on irrational thinking. Low emotional intelligence individuals don't have positive interpersonal relationships with others. But the good news is that at the workplace, a lot of companies have incorporated cognitive behavioral coaching, CBC. And basically, these coaches teach employees self-awareness, and it's geared towards positive productivity as related to the workplace. Okay. So now I have another question for you guys. Do you think emotional intelligence is important at the workplace? Gosh, yes, absolutely. Yes, very much. Yes, definitely, absolutely. Yes. Everybody's pretty much saying it. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Highly. Very well. Definitely. Thank you. All right. Awesome. And another very well, I appreciate you for your responses. Somebody said yes, very important. And you guys are right. It is important in the workplace. According to research, 75% of hiring managers agreed they valued an employee's emotional intelligence more than their IQ. And here are several reasons why. Because emotional intelligence people are better at resolving conflict. They also tend to be better leaders, which draws them to have a greater empathy for others. And highly emotional intelligent individuals are known to make better business decisions, and they're more likely to keep their cool under pressure. Okay, so look at some more emotional intelligence at work. And as you know, landing a job is so competitive these days. So individuals who can apply their emotional intelligence, they actually set themselves at a higher advantage because there's no real competition because a highly emotional intelligent person is more likely to get hired. They are able to recognize their emotions and those in others. So a company would be more likely to hire somebody with high emotional intelligence. And in addition, companies and organizations who have highly emotional, intelligent employees working for them can also set themselves at a higher advantage against their competition. Far from the truth, people do not turn off their emotions when they go to work. And according to Jennifer Bauer's book, they shouldn't turn them off, because Bauer points out that employers are not looking for their boss to be their friend, but they are looking for their employer to treat them with respect and trustworthiness at the workplace. And that's all for me. I will go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Victoria.
Okay. Thank you, Jasmine. Okay. So now that we understand what it is, let's figure out how to develop your superpower. Here's some really good ways to put yourself in a good mindset and to help you to start establishing a good emotional intelligence. And that's just through mindful breathing, good amount of sleep, because if you don't get enough sleep, you're usually pretty cranky the next day. Making sure that you're eating well, exercising, and then also building and maintaining positive relationships. Also positive self-talk, reappraising, which is, we'll get into that in a little bit, and then problem solving. And also scheduling time to do things that are meaningful to you, things that you enjoy doing. So, and we'll talk about that as a strategy a little bit later.
Victoria,
Yes.
before you continue, there was a question about from Deborah Jordan. How does that look in an interview? And Deborah, were you talking about the whole?
So I think, give us a moment and we're going to get you some really good strategies on how to deal with your emotions. How do we actually deal with our emotions? How do we develop that self-awareness? And one of the things that we need to do is we need to start realizing that emotions are important. That it's data, it's information. And if we can change our mindset to be emotion scientists as opposed to emotion judgers, which is what I think currently our society we do, we tend to judge as opposed to seeing emotion as something positive. It's, you can't help to feel. That's what makes us human. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is we need to change our perspective, because if you are an emotional scientist, these people tend to be more curious about emotions. You can look at it as like, okay, this is just something that happens. We experience emotions. We're humans. We have a range of emotions that we experience on a daily basis. You don't just maintain one emotion all day long. You experience a variety of them depending on what happens. It's your reaction. It's your response. Emotions, it's triggered in the brain. It's a fight or flight response. Those are emotions. You can't help it. So instead of stuffing them and judging them as something bad and that we should ignore because we need to stay logical and focus on our intelligence, instead take those emotions and use them as data to understand what's going on. Why am I feeling this way? So when you become an emotional scientist, you tend to be more curious about emotions. You operate in a learner mode. You're more willing to see, okay, what's going on and why is this happening? You tend to be more reflective and more inquisitive about feelings. So you'll want to explore more, you'll want to understand more, and you're willing to explore an emotion regulation strategies, which we'll get into. And then also, you tend to have more of a growth mindset. Whereas if you stay in the emotional judging realm, if you stay in that mindset, then you tend to be more critical about emotions, yours as well as others. People who are emotional judges, they tend to stay in the knower mode. They know everything. You don't have to tell them anything. Don't tell them anything because they know it all. You know those people like, yeah, I know. Oh, and they tell you how you're supposed to feel. Also, they tend to be very closed off emotionally. And they have a fixed mindset about developing emotion skills. So I come from a background of people who do not know how to handle their emotions. In fact, they would flee from their emotions. And this is pretty much how I grew up, with a bunch of emotional judgers. You couldn't feel. You couldn't express your feelings without them wanting to just shut it down, because emotions are scary. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to a whole method or system of developing emotional intelligence. It's called Ruler. This system has been developed by the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. The director of this center is Dr. Mark Brackett, and his team over at Yale have incorporated this system into over 2,000 schools across the country. And the results are phenomenal. What they wanted to do, what Mark wanted to do, because he had a pretty hard childhood upbringing. He was a pretty angry kid. He was not able to express his emotions growing up. And he got bullied a lot, and he just did not have a safe environment where he could express himself. But he had one uncle that allowed him to be heard. And so he was able to talk about his feelings to his one uncle, who happened to be a middle school teacher. And as Mark grew up and went to school, he realized, we need to change the world. We need to help children figure out how to express their emotions. But they realized early on that, yes, this is something that kids need to learn how to do, but so do adults. So do the teachers, so do the principals, the administrators, in the school district, and so do the parents. So they devised a whole system that they are bringing into the schools, but in order for it to work, they've had to educate the superintendent, they had to educate the principals, they have had to educate the teachers, as well as the parents. Because if you're teaching this to the student, to the kid's going to accept it. Yet they need to be able to practice it in an environment that's receptive to it. And so this is what's happening. So not only are they changing schools, they're changing communities wherever this is being taught. And if you walk into a school that is a ruler school, you get greeted by a student who, before you can go anywhere, before you can enter into the building, they're going to stand there and explain to you ruler. And they're going to ask you to check in with your own feelings and figure out where you are. So it's a fantastic system. So I can't wait to show it to you. And the first part of ruler is to be able to recognize your feelings. Then you want to understand your feelings, be able to label them, express them, and then regulate. These are the 5 skills that make up ruler that go into becoming more emotionally intelligent. The first 3, recognize, understand, and label, are really critical in helping you to become more self-aware. This is going to help you make meaning out of your emotions and as well as other people's emotions. So as you understand yourself, then you're able to understand others better. Then the last 2 are what we do with those emotions. So in recognize, you want to learn to recognize your emotions. Recognizing the occurrence of an emotion and when it shows up and how does that change your thoughts, your energy, your body, your facial expressions, body language, and vocal tone. So I'm going to start off with a question. How are you feeling today? Okay, great, good. Fabulous. Okay, awesome, happy, fantastic. Someone actually said happy, good. Stressed, a little stressed, allergy-ridden, focused, good, stressed and blessed, awesome. Stressed and blessed, that's a good one. Happy, good. Calm, satisfied. Excellent, Sharon Walker. You actually used some words. Excellent. Most of you used good and used great. You didn't actually use a word, which we'll get into in just a minute. But now I want you to define how you feel a little bit better. So this is the mood meter. This is something that, again, was developed by the folks over at Yale. And this is a tool that you can use to actually plant or figure out on a graph where you are. So you can see this square is divided up into 4 quadrants. We're going to take a look at the first line. The horizontal axis is pleasantness. So what I want you to do is everybody take a deep breath. We're going to take a deep breath in and then exhale. So ready? Okay. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3. Try it one more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now just sense, where are you on this pleasantness? Are you on the low end of pleasantness? Or are you on the middle, or are you somewhere in the high end? Shirley Ramirez is a +3 on the pleasantness scale. Glenda is on a +2, +4, +3, +4, +4, +4. Golly, y'all are a bunch of happy people. Oh, hey, there's a -2. Okay. +3, -1. Good. So middle range there. +3, +4, +1, +3. Good. So got a lot of good, happy people and some people in the middle. I'm glad to hear that nobody's down in the deepest, darkest depths of despair, which is a -5. So that's good news. But we got some people that are super happy. Excellent. Sharon, have you done this before? You're already at a +3, +3. I think you've done this before. Now we're going to take a look at energy. So what they've discovered is that human mood can be measured in pleasantness and energy. Somebody's in a really happy mood because they're going on vacation tomorrow. I don't blame you. Okay, so energy wise, where are you on this scale? Are you deep down on the low end, -5, or are you up on the +5? +5, -1, +4, -1, +2.
We have some negatives. Quite.
Okay, that's okay. Low energy is okay. Low energy is good. It helps you focus. Sometimes you can't be, bouncing out of your seat all the time. That's okay. Okay, excellent. So probably a +4, a +3, a +5, a lot of energy.
Marie has a home of +3, but at work a +5.
She's a busy lady at work. Okay. Coordinates for plotting, +5, +5. Okay. Somebody is super happy. All right. So you got the idea. So now the whole point is to plot where you are. And I think some of you have already started to do that. So the beauty about this graph is that you can actually pinpoint where you are on the mood meter and check in, because it's going to change. It changes throughout the course of the day. I could say, earlier, right before this, I was pretty much at probably around a +3 on energy wise, but kind of at a -1 or -2 because I'm freaking out. I have to do this webinar. So my energy level was a little bit over here because there was some last minute tweaks I needed to do to the presentation. So I was a little nervous and a little stressed about it. But now that I've got it going, I'm happy. Still energy is up high. It's a +3, but I think I'm over at maybe +1, +2 because I'm doing good. Things are going well. Thank you, Claire. I'm doing great. Yes, I agree. So things change. So you can see. So I will tell you how helpful this has been. Before I came to Houston, I moved to Houston a little over a year ago. And beforehand, I was living on a goat farm with some friends. And we all shared a house together. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing harder than as an adult living with other adults and having to deal with, one married couple and the rest of us were single, renting rooms from the couple. And there were some times where tension got high because people were dealing with their own emotions, people were dealing with issues, things that pop up that you get triggered up about, and how do you handle it? And we've all admitted that, attitude is contagious. So, as a result, you have to be cognizant and you have to learn how to deal with those emotions. And so it got to the point where we started to just ask ourselves on a daily basis, actually a moment to moment basis at times, like, how's my attitude? And you just started learning to check in with yourself on a regular basis. How's my attitude? I mean, sometimes we would just have to say prayers or something to just kind of change the focus and get into a positive mind frame so that, you didn't want to bite somebody's head off because you're already triggered up and anything would set you off. So you have to learn how to check in with yourself. And this mood meter is a great tool for that. So that's about recognizing, understand. So let's get to number 2. Number 2 is understand. Know what the root cause of the emotion is. So when you start to check in with yourself and you realize, okay, I'm having some issues here. What's going on? What's setting me off? You have to get into it and understand it. And then understand how your thoughts and decisions are influenced by your emotions. Because then once you understand that, you could start to make better decisions for yourself. and for others, and how to handle yourself and how to handle others' emotions too, when you start to understand, okay, where's this coming from? So as a kid, I was a very inquisitive child. And I grew up, like I said before, I grew up in a family that was emotionally stifled. And I was trying to understand my mother. My mother closed herself off. She did not talk to us. She was kind of stuck in her head and in her own emotions, dealing with her childhood issues. And she would do that by shutting herself up in her sewing room for hours on end. And then she would create something, and then because she wasn't happy, she would take it apart and start all over. It drove my father nuts. But I wanted to understand her. I was trying to understand her. There was a lot of things going on in the family that needed a lot of help. And I complained to my doctor one day, who said, well, you guys need family counseling. And so I managed to got everybody into family counseling. And since they were so receptive to the idea of talking about their emotions, when the counselor asked, so why are you here today? They all looked at me, turned to me, pointed their finger at me and said, we don't know, she made us come. So, it was hard to really start understanding emotions, but I was determined to figure it out and understand them so that I could better understand myself and understand, where is this coming from? Is this me or is this them? And then a bunch of therapy later, I realized, oh, it was always them. Okay. But to illustrate this whole point a little bit further, let's talk about jealousy and envy. What is the difference between jealousy and envy? Write out a definition for me.
And while we're waiting, Ashley says, good for you on that effort, Victoria.
Oh,
so
thank you, Ashley.
thank you for sharing that story, because that's a very personal story that you were willing to share with us, to give us that example. So thank you for sharing that. So jealousy and envy. I know you're typing your definition of jealousy and envy. So
it's a hard one, but the reason for this is jealousy, wanting to be recognized. Okay.
Okay. So I'll read these because they're going pretty quick. So Anne Marie says, envy has an element of sadness and hurt, and jealousy has anger. And Betty says, wanting what others have. That must be
envy.
Okay. Yeah. Margie says, not sure. Well, thank you, because they're very similar. Linda says, envy is the emotion of covering what someone else has while jealousy is the emotion related to fear that something you have will be taken away by someone else. Ooh, Linda,
Bravo.
I like that.
Bravo. That's it. That's exactly it. Well done.
Do we want to read there? Oh my God, there's so many more coming through. So
jealous of what? Okay. Jealousy is what she just said. Who is it that said that?
Linda Fajoko.
Read it again, because I've lost it. I can't find it.
Jealousy is the emotion related to fear that something you have will be taken away by someone else.
That's it. That's exactly what jealousy means. Envy is wanting what others have. There's the difference.
Carol said wanting what others have as envy. So thank you, everybody, for participating. There are all kinds of definitions coming through. Jealousy is the green-eyed cat.
You're right. Green-eyed monster. You're right. You're absolutely right. But see how it's difficult to distinguish these emotions. We've gotten these confused for a long time, and a lot of people do confuse them. But thank you for that definition, Linda, because you nailed jealousy. And envy is is what everyone else is saying. It's longing for what someone else has, possession or status or anything. So what's important is being able to label your emotions, because when you do that, it legitimizes and organizes our experiences. It helps others to meet our needs, and it helps us to meet other people's needs. And it connects us to the rest of the world, because once you're able to clearly identify what you're feeling and put a label on it, then you develop the mental picture of what that is. And so you understand it. You feel it, you understand it, and you take it out of you. It's no longer trapped in your mind and in your body. It's actually outside of you. And now you can handle it. You can start to deal with it. And that's what's important about labeling. It's really powerful once you're able to label your emotions correctly. So now let's take a look at the mood meter. really what a mood meter looks like is this. Yes, you've got that scale, but then each of those little cells is an adjective of feeling, an emotion. And once you understand where you are, you know, and this may be different for you or for your family or your community. The beauty about this whole system is that you start off with that basic chart, you know, with the graphs, the horizontal and vertical lines, but then you label each cell with an emotion. So you can see that when you're high on the emotion, high on the energy, and then but low on the pleasantness, you're in the red zone. This is anger. There's different degrees of it. You know, people say, what was fascinating about one of the studies they did at Yale, Dr. Brackett said, you know, he interviewed college students and they were always saying, you know, he would say, how are you feeling? And they would say, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. But as he dug deeper, he realized they weren't stressed in the same way of feeling like everything is on top of them. What they were really feeling was envy. They were really feeling more envy of what they felt like they didn't have, or, you know, that they were envious of someone else whose parents had more money than theirs, or they felt like, oh, well, so-and-so's father is a senator, so they're going to have more doors open to them, or so-and-so is, you know, in this sorority or this fraternity, so more doors will open to them. So there was always that sense of envy, of that comparison, of always comparing themselves to someone else. And that's what was stressing them out. They weren't really feeling stress in the true sense of stress. They were feeling it more in the sense of envy, of comparing themselves and feeling like they weren't measuring up. So then over here, on the opposite side, on the more pleasantness scale, you have these words, the yellow section that's more, obviously more positive. You're feeling really high energy and high on the pleasantness scale, and you're bouncing off the walls. And of course, there's different levels of it, because the lower you go on the pleasantness scale, over here, the lower you are on the pleasantness scale, then you start to come into this green area. The green area is more the content, more meditative. I know a lot of you out there have talked about meditation. So meditation is it calms your energy levels, you know, and then you can have still high on the pleasantness scale, but lower on the energy. So more in the negatives on the energy, but higher in the pleasantness. Then if you go lower on the pleasantness, now we come into more of the more melancholy, more depressed, to the point of hopelessness and despair. So this is pretty dangerous down here. But there are points where we can learn to regulate our energy as well as our moods. And that's the beauty of this as well. Because you may come into a situation where if you're about to teach a class on something where you need to get your students excited, or you're teaching them how to write a persuasive essay. I'm not sure if you guys do that in adult ed, but if you have to do like a persuasive essay, you kind of have to get your class more in the energized and in the red zone, because you want them to go out and conquer the world. They have to be persuasive. They kind of have to fight a little bit.
Okay, we have a question. Would you apply this to adult education by understanding how to communicate and recognize things we observe in our students?
Of course.
But I think another good point would be you have to maybe introduce this to your students so they can recognize where they are emotionally, because sometimes our students don't recognize their own emotions. And it's really important for them to be able to recognize their emotions in the workplace setting or even in class.
Okay, great. So the next part, step 4 in Ruler, is being able to express your emotions. And this is where it gets tricky, because I think the real fear, and the reason why we use those phrases when someone asks, so how are you feeling? Oh, I'm fine, I'm great. It's because in truth, we're not really sure how to display our emotions, or when is it really appropriate. And honestly, it's scary. And a lot of people, I mean, that's what I discovered with my mother. It was really hard because it was really scary for her to express her own emotions. And as a result, and for me too, there are times where it's really hard to express because sometimes you don't want to admit what you're feeling. Sometimes you don't want to face it, what you're feeling.
Deborah says sometimes it's not safe to share.
Exactly.
Thank you for that, Deborah.
You're absolutely right. And that was one of the points too, is that, it's really difficult sometimes to share your emotions. I took here's another example in my life. I took, when I was in college, I took a class on women's literature. And one of the projects that we had to do was create some kind of artistical representation of how we felt boxed in as women. Well, I created my box basically, and I was going through some really hard stuff at the time. And so I was trying to express it to my father, and I was demonstrated it to him. And I explained the whole box and what this was about and explained all the feelings I was going through. And as a result, when I said, so I was waiting for his input or his reaction. And he was like, wow, Victoria, I didn't realize you were so philosophical. I almost like hit my head on the wall. Okay, I'm talking to nothing here. This isn't working out. But again, it's hard. And if you don't know how to handle emotion yourself, how can you be present for someone else when they're displaying their emotions? So that's the key. The reason why we have such a hard time communicating with each other is that if you don't understand yourself and you can't pinpoint your emotions, how can you be present to somebody else when they're trying to explain theirs? So everything that we've learned up to this point, being able to recognize, understand, and label emotions is really, really important so that you can then express emotions and then be present when someone needs to express their emotions to you. Because when we express, what we're trying to do is we're saying, here's what I feel and why. Here's what I want to happen next. And here's what I need from you right now. And in my father's case, he didn't know how to respond back to me. He just didn't have it. He didn't have the equipment, the capacity, the skill set to respond back the way I needed him to do so. So again, if you've got to get the RUL part down, the recognize, understand, and label within yourself so that we can learn how to express appropriately, because this is what we all want from each other. Okay, regulating. So here's the really hard part, but this is it. This is the pinnacle. Once you're able to get all the other 4 skills underway, regulating is what it's all about. It's the hierarchy. It's the top. It's the pinnacle of the whole emotional intelligence. Yeah, exactly, Christina. I gotcha. You also had issues with your father responding to your emotions. Exactly. But and that's the case in all of our relationships too. But if you are able to do this for yourself, then you can start teaching people in your family, your communities, how to do this as well. And another tool, so here's some tools for self-regulating. Mindful breathing. We've talked about meditating. Some people have been talking about meditating. Mindful breathing. Like what I did, taking just that few seconds to take in a couple of deep breaths and then just registering in your mind, where am I? Also, maybe when you're faced with a really hard situation or you've been triggered up, you can take a moment to take a few deep breaths and then maybe have some kind of mantra of, okay, I need to feel calm. It's going to be okay. Just take a deep breath. Something that you can say to yourself over and over again while you're breathing. Another strategy that you can use for self-regulating is forward-looking strategies. Planning ahead. You're going to go to Thanksgiving dinner and you're going to have to deal with the creepy uncle. What can I do to avoid what are my strategies for dealing with this creepy uncle or the cousin that's just going to get under your skin? How do you handle this? What are some strategies that you could develop for yourself? And then attention shifting strategies. We're really good at this in our society. We use procrastination, we use avoidance, we use our phones to distract us, we use, binge watching on Netflix. These are all our attention shifting strategies, but sometimes that is good and sometimes that's not so good. So something to do to divert your attention, like taking a lap, maybe exercising, that's a good thing. These are, something to shift the focus away temporarily so that you can get into a better frame of mind. Cognitive reframing strategies. This, again, is being able to shift another exercise in shifting your thinking. And then also one that's not on here, but that's a part of this is self-talk and self-care. Like you're saying, self-talk is another good one, but positive self-talk. We're all good at negative self-talk, but the positive self-talk of thinking, okay, you know what? I'm freaking out over something right now. Is it really that imperative? Is it really that catastrophic? No, it's not. Tomorrow's another day, just, one step forward. Sometimes I feel like if I don't have everything planned or if I don't have a list written down, if I write it down, I'll feel better about it. And then I won't work myself up into a frenzy and freak out over it. So these are just typical strategies. Changing thoughts is easier than changing feelings. You're right. But it's also, if you change your thoughts, hopefully it will move you into changing your feelings. Here's another one. This is called the meta moment, and this is a really fantastic exercise, and it's the last thing I'm going to talk about. Meta moment is another really fascinating strategy that Dr. Brackett talks about in his book, by the way, called Permission to Feel. It is when you get triggered up or caught off guard, you want to sense the shift in yourself. What's happened? Okay, something surprised you, something angered you. You have to be able to recognize, okay, what is this? And notice the change in your mind and your body. And then step 2 is stop or pause. Create some space before you respond. Don't just, have that knee-jerk reaction. You've got to practice, okay, breathing. Let me take a breath. Let me pause just a moment before I react, before I say something. And then number 3, I think is really cool. It's being able to stop and reflect and think about, what would my best self look like in this moment? I'm ready to throttle this person, but is that really going to be appropriate right now? Probably not. So what would my best self look like? Would be that, how can I get to that person that is going to just be calm, come over here, like Jackie Onassis, who always was able to just put somebody in their place very smoothly and very politely and with lots of charisma. But when she left you, you realized you had just been put in your place. What would that look like? That's where I'm trying to get to. What is my best self going to look like? And then another way of looking at it is, what are some adjectives that would describe your best self that could bring about an image of who that is to you in your mind, or what you look like as your best self in this instance? So maybe having some adjectives or an image that will trigger that best self for you. So when you're in the moment, you have it and you can move in your best self, as opposed to your angry worst self that's you're desperately trying to contain. So it's a strategy to help you shift. So like you said, thoughts are easier to shift than emotions, but if you can move with your thought, that's the trigger. And then strategize and act. So try by positive self-talk or reframing the situation. So I hope this was helpful for all of you. The book that I took a lot of this from is called Permission to Feel. And I will show this to you really fast so you can see it. Permission to Feel. It's written by Dr. Mark Brackett, PhD, from Yale University. It's a great book. It describes all of this in depth. So I highly recommend it for you guys. Thank you so much for your time.